Yeah, today I have Sheriff Bill Brown, United States Coast Guard Captain Monica Rochester, Santa Barbara County Fire Chief Mark Hartwig, and Suzanne Grimacy from our county's Behavioral Wellness. Okay, so just a couple more minutes and we'll be out and we'll get things started.
No, it's very unusual.
Like if you stand here,
They're gonna all be blocked in.
they are. There's a lot of them. Yeah, but if not,
Yeah.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you again for being here. My name is Lieutenant Eric Rainey. I'm the Public Information Officer for the Santa Barbara County Sheriff's Office. Today's press conference, we'll have a number of speakers to update you on this incident. We'll have Sheriff Bill Brown, United States Coast Guard Captain Monica Rochester, Santa Barbara County Fire Chief Mark Hartwig, and Suzanne Grimacy from our county's behavioral wellness. We will also have National Park Service representatives here that can answer any questions that you may have for them as the island's in their jurisdiction. We'll do that after the press conference. Without further ado, I'd like to welcome Sheriff Bill Brown to the podium. Thank you.
Thank you, Lieutenant Rainey, and thank you all for being here today once again. I want to just begin by saying once again that our hearts go out to all of the victims' families who are having to endure this terrible process as we work to recover loved ones and have searched for their loved ones. We realize that the information that we're about to convey in this press conference is difficult and painful for them, and we want to just let them know that they are in our hearts and that we express our deepest sympathies. Yesterday, beginning at first light and continuing throughout the day, the search for survivors and victims of the disaster that took place on the Conception continued. As part of the initial size-up to assess the search area, we were fortunate that the Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department dive team flew into the area and deployed divers. Once the size-up was completed, the search operation was turned over to the Santa Barbara Sheriff's Underwater Search and Rescue Team. The U.S. Coast Guard, the National Park Service, the San Luis Obispo Sheriff's Dive Team all supported our team's search efforts in the search and recovery process. Sadly, no additional survivors have been found. An additional 16 victims were located in yesterday afternoon's efforts and were brought back to our Coroner's Bureau. This makes in total 20 victims who have been recovered and transported to our Coroner's Bureau. Thus far, the victims have only been identified as 11 female and 9 male remains. There were several other victims that were seen by the divers, somewhere between 4 and 6, that are still within the wreckage, but due to the positioning of the boat, they were unable to be recovered before nightfall. Today, efforts will be made to stabilize the boat so that divers can safely enter it, search it, and recover additional victims. Divers will also map a search area based on currents and the debris field, which is about a half mile in size, in our continuing efforts to recover additional victims and evidence. This type of underwater search and recovery operation can be taxing and dangerous, with divers operating in up to 65 feet of water. We want to make sure that this process is done safely and methodically, so we appreciate the families and the patients the families and the public's patience and understanding as the search continues. I want to talk a little bit about the coroner's process and the investigative process. The process of identifying the victims and notifying families is underway, concurrent with the search effort. Sheriff's Office investigators in our Criminal Investigation Division are working with the Family Assistance Center and the call center, which to date has received over 100 calls from family or friends who believed that loved ones were on board the conception. Investigators are comparing information from the callers with the vessel's passenger list. Since many, if not all, of the victims who have been recovered will need to be identified through DNA analysis, investigators will be coordinating, commencing today, with family members to collect DNA samples for comparison purposes. In all, 30 victim family members have been connected with the sheriff's office. Only 4 families of the 34 passengers have not yet been connected with investigators. The Sheriff's Coroner's Bureau has had mutual aid assistance from the Los Angeles County Medical Examiner's Office, and a special team from the state's Department of Justice is lending their expertise with a rapid DNA analysis tool that was instrumental in identifying victims in the Camp Fire. Today, we will begin the process of mapping DNA profiles of the 20 victims that we have recovered so far so that they can be compared with family samples that will be collected commencing today and in the days to come. An operation this large could not be handled by a single agency, and I want to thank our allied agencies and cooperators, the many local, state, and federal agencies that have come together once again as a team of teams to address this disaster. In the initial response and the first day of the incident, we thank and appreciate the Coast Guard, the Ventura County Fire Department, the Santa Barbara Harbor Patrol, the Ventura Sheriff's Office, and the Los Angeles County Sheriff. And as we are moving into the sustained search and recovery efforts, I want to thank the Cal Office of Emergency Services out of the Governor's Office, the San Luis Obispo County Sheriff's Department, the National Park Service, the FBI, the Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms, and Explosives Division, the Sacramento branch of the State Department of Justice, the Orange County Sheriff, the Long Beach Police Department that's helping with security in the exclusion zone, and the California Department of Fish and Wildlife. The Family Assistance Center that has been set up is doing extraordinary work, and I want to thank the team that is assembled there and working directly with the victims' families. Members of the District Attorney's Office, the Behavioral Wellness Department, our chaplains from the Sheriff's Office, Hospice of Santa Barbara, the American Red Cross, the Salvation Army, and counselors from the At Ease program that is there in support of the first responders who are dealing with this terrible incident. Once again, I want to express our sympathies to the family members and our thanks to those who are supporting our continuing efforts to locate everyone who was involved in this disaster. I now would like to introduce Captain Monica Rochester from the U.S. Coast Guard.
I'm Captain Monica Rochester, Captain of the Port for Coast Guard Sector Los Angeles, Long Beach. As of 9:40 a.m. this morning, Coast Guard has suspended search efforts pending further development. It is never an easy decision to suspend search efforts. We know that this is a very difficult time for families and friends of the victims. We have suspended these search efforts due to no additional individuals having been witnessed entering the water. Our last aircraft overflight this morning has revealed that no additional signs of distress or debris has been witnessed. The Coast Guard and other partner agencies conducted 7 missions consisting of 3 helicopter crews and multiple surface assets covering an area of approximately 160 miles. Coast Guard Air Station San Francisco Forward Operating Base, Point Magoo, MH-65 Dolphin helicopter crew was involved. 2 45-foot response boat mediums from Coast Guard Station Channel Islands Harbor, Coast Guard cutter Narwhal, home ported in Corona del Mar, California, who has been relieved this morning, and a 45 response boat medium has been called in her place to maintain on-scene commander. The National Park Service, Santa Barbara County Sheriff's Department, Santa Barbara County Fire Department, Ventura County Fire Department. Again, our hearts, our thoughts are with the family and friends of the victims. Our total search time for our efforts was just below 24 hours. The Coast Guard will continue working alongside our partner agencies throughout the recovery and now investigation phase of this incident to try and determine why this incident occurred and what we can learn from this tragedy moving forward. We will work in concert with the National Transportation Safety Board, who is here with us today. That concludes my statement.
Mark Hartwig, County Fire Chief, Fire Warden. As this community continues to deal with the unfolding tragedy and as this incident really turns into a search and recovery effort, the County Fire District is committed to, on behalf of the County of Santa Barbara, expending all necessary means to find out the cause and origin of the fire aboard this vessel in the County of Santa Barbara. We're sensitive to the fact that families are gathered today, some from outside of the area, to bring their loved ones home. And in many cases, will only be faced with the ability to know that we recovered them, and then will rely on us to do everything in our power to find out what happened aboard that vessel in the last moments of these family members' lives. That's our commitment from the County of Santa Barbara, and we'll keep you posted as we get more information.
My name is Suzanne Grimacy. I work with the County of Santa Barbara, the Department of Behavioral Wellness. The information that we're hearing today is painful and difficult for everyone. But important to recognize there's some people, families, friends, loved ones that will never forget today, and will never forget the pain in hearing the change in the search and rescue to a search and recovery effort. The Family Assistance Center remains open, will be open throughout the day today, ongoing through Thursday from 9 a.m. till 6:30 p.m. We'll extend hours and days as needed. The Family Assistance Center is set up as a place for families, friends, loved ones to come safely and get information, to get resources and referrals, and to get counseling and support. I want to thank our media for understanding this and helping to create a safe place where family members know that they can come and get that support. We really want to encourage those that have been directly impacted to use this as a resource to come and get support for yourself, your families. It's also a place where you can come and join with other families who are sharing the same loss. The Family Assistance Center, as you heard from Sheriff Brown, is staffed by a broad team by the Department of Behavioral Wellness. We have local clergy and chaplains. We have the District Attorney's Office present, American Red Cross, Hospice of Santa Barbara. We have fire, police, sheriff, Coast Guard will be joining us today. So really encourage families to utilize this resource. And our county information call line remains available as well. The number is 833-688-5551. Thank you very much.
Sheriff Brown.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, we'll take some questions right here.
For Captain Rochester, I'd like to ask you a two-part question, Captain. First of all, clarification for me, many of my colleagues, are vessels like this required to have some type of smoke detector on there? And my second question, more or less an explanation from you, for people who don't understand, what does it mean when you go from search to recovery? What are the implications? What does that actually mean?
Okay, the first question is, are these types of vessels required to have smoke detectors on board? And that is correct. They are required to have that in all berthing spaces. And the second question was, what are the implications associated with moving from a search and rescue operation to a recovery? And that is, we have made the determination based on current information that as far as deliberate search and rescue efforts, they have ceased. So that means the Coast Guard will not necessarily be tasking any of our boats or our helicopters to continue to be looking for victims. And so that transitions into the recovery phase, as the sheriff mentioned, for the victims. Please just one at a time.
Quick question for you. Can you explain what did the crew tell you about how this fire started and the frantic moments that followed?
Okay, what did the crew tell me how the fire started and the frantic moments? I don't have any of that information.
What did they tell the Coast Guard? It's been 24 hours.
The Coast Guard is presently in the process of investigating and interviewing those folks with the National Transportation Safety Board, so I don't have that information.
They were able to get to a dinghy in order to save their own lives.
I know that based on the Mayday call that came over. That's my collective information.
Has anybody spoken with them since they were arrested?
I believe the Santa Barbara detectives were spoken with them. Let me transition to this gentleman here. Nobody said anything directly to me, okay? We received the Mayday call over Channel 16 through our Sector Command Center.
At this point, are you assuming that all 34 passengers did not make it?
That would be a correct assumption.
And can you elaborate? There's been reports that they were possibly locked down in the sleeping area. Is that accurate?
I heard that, and that's actually, quite frankly, that's actually on our recorded call for the Mayday. I personally have interviewed that radio watchstander as well as the manager of the floor for this particular incident. A lot of activity was happening, as you can surmise, coming over the communication system, over our radios. A lot of adrenaline, a lot of confusion. And I think my best deduction is the member was, the radio communicator was trying to ask for information. There are no locked doors in accommodation spaces aboard these vessels. It's open berthing. The only privacy that you have, and I'm sure that you've seen, because it's on the vessel's website, are curtains. That's it.
Likely that they were trapped by the flames on top.
I would suspect.
Lines, the Mayday call also indicated that perhaps there wasn't a fire extinguisher on board, or there was a question of that. Have you learned anything about that? What can you tell us?
Okay, this vessel is required to be inspected annually by the U.S. Coast Guard, and it has been in compliance with all federal regulations. It is required to have not only fixed firefighting system, but also portable firefighting systems.
The term explosion was mentioned yesterday as a possibility. Are you going there to say that that did occur and that may have been one of the first things to happen versus the speed of which how this fire started?
I'm sorry, let me take that a little bit. You were asking my comments to a potential report of the vessel having an explosion on board. Is that what you're... Okay, that's all under investigation. I don't have any confirmation of that.
Are they required to have a night watch, and was there a night watch?
That is also, the question is, are they required to have a night watch or a roving watch? That is also under investigation. My understanding is on the regulations that is correct.
Is there a possibility that you may not bring the boat back?
I don't have that information right now. What I can offer to you is we are creating a salvage plan to ensure that, one, first and foremost, is the safety of the responders, the divers that are on scene, and to ensure that, if the vessel is inverted and upside down, it's going to have equipment hanging down on it. So we certainly don't want to put our divers in any kind of distress or harm's way. So that salvage plan, working with the owner, working with the sheriffs, will be forthcoming. We don't know yet. I heard some, yes.
Captain, where was the Mayday call made from? Was it made from the Conception, or was it made from another vessel? And if we could hear from the NTSB about their investigation?
I believe the Mayday call came from the Grape Escape, which is our Good Samaritan, but we certainly can follow up and confirm with that. Sir?
This might be for Sheriff Brown, but I'm wondering if any of the bodies that have been recovered so far have been examined by the coroner to determine how they died, drowning, burning.
The question was, have any of the bodies that have been recovered thus far been examined by the pathologist to determine what the cause of death was? And at this point, they have not. We have not conducted the actual autopsies yet on those bodies, and they have been visually examined, but not subject to autopsy. And if I could just clarify something that I think seems to be, it appears as though the Mayday calls actually may have gotten conflated. There have been released messages about the calls, but the first Mayday call may have been actually from the Conception when a Mayday was put out and there was information that the person couldn't breathe. And then subsequent to that, there appeared to have been other Mayday calls that were put out by the Good Samaritan vessel that was nearby. When some of the clips from those calls have been shown on the news, they have been sort of put back to back with each other, which kind of indicated it was the same conversation, which I don't believe was. So just to take that in context, there may be some conflation going on there. In addition to that, the operator of the Good Samaritan boat that rescued the 5 crew members, he indicated to the media that he heard some explosions that were occurring, but that would have been well after the fire was underway. And as I indicated yesterday, that could have been propane bottles or scuba tanks that could have been blowing up in the fire as well. So there's no indication at this point in the investigation that there was an explosion that preceded this fire or this event.
The surviving crew members have been interviewed, so you must have some indication as to how this fire started. Could you share that with us?
The question was, since the crew members have been interviewed, is there any indication, can we share with them what happened? We do have statements that have been written by the crew members, and the crew members will be interviewed formally today as part of the investigative process. But since the investigation is ongoing, I'm not at liberty to release any of that information right now.
Was the captain of the ship one of those who jumped?
Question was the captain of the ship one of the members who jumped into the water and survived? And yes, all indications are that he was. The one crew member who was not rescued appears to have been asleep in the sleeping area down below with the passengers.
So I have heard from family members that they called in the morning yesterday, first thing in the morning, and never got a call until the evening. Is there a reason why there was a lapse, or has there been a lapse of families not being contacted back by the hotline?
Yeah, the question was that there was a alleged delay in responding to a family member that called in the morning. I don't have any information about that. I can certainly tell you that our goal would be to contact members as soon as possible, and I'm certain that our people are working to do that as quickly as possible.
Could you talk about the challenge of handling potentially dozens of bodies in a short amount of time as you investigate this?
The question was that, can you comment on the challenge of handling so many bodies in such a short period of time? This is a large number, obviously, of fatal casualties that have occurred, and much more than we are normally used to dealing with. But we have received some outstanding support from Los Angeles County Coroner's Office. They have sent us a mobile cooler and additional personnel, so we have we're fully capable of handling all potential fatalities from this incident.
The remains found inside the vessel, will those come up today? And also, you assume that the remaining remains are somewhere on the ocean floor?
So the question was, of the remaining remains that are in the vessel, will they be brought up today, and could there be other remains that are on the ocean floor? Certainly our hope is that we will be able to penetrate the wreckage today, stabilize the vessel, penetrate the wreckage, conduct an investigation, search it, and then recover any remains that are in the boat. In terms of what is outside in the debris field, we just don't know at this point. Obviously, we're going to have to see how many total bodies we recover, and if there are still bodies missing, then we'll have to look further into the debris and the wreckage that's on the ocean floor.
Are you using DNA, the bodies, because they're burn injuries, or you just don't have intact bodies?
The question was, why are we using DNA to identify the bodies? But there was an extraordinarily hot fire, and the bodies do exhibit signs of extreme thermal damage.
You mentioned that the majority of family members, you believe, have rang in. Are you able to give us an idea of the ages of people on board now, nationalities, that kind of thing?
Question was, do we have the ages and the nationalities of the people on board? I don't have that information yet. I've asked for it. It's being compiled. Anecdotally, we've heard that there was a 17-year-old that was on the vessel, and from also anecdotally, I know there were some people that were probably in their 60s. Don't have the exact range for you. As far as where they were from, the majority of the people on this trip appear to have been from the Santa Cruz, San Jose Bay Area region that contracted with this company that chartered this vessel.
With the DNA tool that was used in the campfire, how long do you think it'll take to identify the victims?
Question is, how long do we think it'll take to identify the victims through the DNA process? All I can tell you is it's a rapid process compared to the normal DNA process. Normally, DNA can take days, weeks, or months to obtain. This system is capable of doing it much more rapidly than that, but I can't give you an exact amount of time. It will be done as rapidly as possible.
Sir, if there are any bodies still lost at sea that aren't recovered and the Coast Guard has called off anything, will any auxiliary teams be dispatched to help find the lost brothers and sister divers?
You're saying if we don't recover them all? Yes. So the question was, if we don't recover all of the victims, is there going to be any additional search for them? So again, it's premature to say that, because our hope is that once we get into the vessel, hopefully today, that we will find the remaining victims and recover them. Obviously, if that doesn't happen, we will be looking at the debris field and other areas where there could be remains from the victims of this terrible tragedy.
Sheriff, is there any indication that any of the 34 people who were below deck managed to make it through the flames before they perished?
Question is there any indication that anybody that was below deck managed to make it through the flames and above and to get out? And there is no indication of that at all.
Two things. Was there any? Why do you need to do DNA testing if you have a manifest? You pretty much know who was already on the boat. And what are the families providing you to be able to do that DNA testing?
What was the first part of your question?
If you have the manifest, why is it important to do the DNA testing again?
So the question was, since we have the manifest and names of people who were aboard the vessel, why is it important to use DNA to determine it? We have to make a determination that the people whose names we have are in fact those people who were aboard the vessel, those who we know have perished, and those who we are continuing to look for and hopefully will recover shortly. So it has to be done through that process. We don't do it any other way.
Bodies that have been.
And what do you need from the families to do the DNA analysis?
So the question was, what do we need from the families to do DNA analysis? So today our investigators will be reaching out to those family members who have contacted us, and if any family members have not contacted us for any reason, we ask that you do that. The reason being, we need to take familial DNA samples. We need to take a DNA sample from a parent or a sibling of the person who was believed to be on the vessel. That is done with something called a buccal swab. It's basically a swab that just takes saliva from the mouth of the donor, and then that DNA sample that is donated will be compared with DNA samples that we will take from the remains of the victims who are in our custody now.
Thank you. Can you shed more light on how it was that 5 of the 6 crew members happened to be up on the bridge? Were they having a meeting? Were they about to cook breakfast? Were they recharging scuba tanks? Just what was going on there?
So the question is, why were the 5 crew members above deck and everyone else below deck? Essentially, the way the ship configuration is, there are 3 decks on this ship. Essentially, the below deck or the lower deck is the sleeping area. The secondary deck had the galley and the salon area, and the third deck was the crew's quarters and the bridge for the vessel. So the crew would be perfectly normal for the crew to be up on that third deck. That was their assigned location to sleep, and the bridge of the vessel was up there as well.
Were they awake or were they also asleep when the fire started?
I'm sorry.
I want to ask you, is it your belief, based on what you know, that basically those people on that third deck, that you're the lower deck, essentially had no chance to survive, based on what you're gathering from the information you know so far?
Yes, the question was, is it appearing as though the people who are below deck were trapped and unable to exit the vessel? And that does appear to be exactly what happened, that there was a stairwell to get down the main entryway up and down, and there was an escape hatch, and it would appear as though both of those were blocked by fire.
For the bodies that have been recovered, has the coroner come up with an initial cause of death at this point?
Yeah, the question is, have we got an initial cause of death on the bodies that have been recovered thus far? And no, we have not. We've just done a visual exam on the bodies so far. That will be conducted.
You've been busy with the investigative work. What kind of an emotional toll has this taken on you, the men and women in this operation?
The question is, we've been very busy with this work, but what kind of emotional toll has this taken on the first responders and all of us who are involved in this incident? And I can tell you that it is a very poignant duty that we have, and many of us have been and will be continuing to go to the Family Assistance Center and to meet with family members and those who are supporting them. And the humanity of this is very evident. The broad impact, the devastating impact on so many families and so many people and on this community is evident, and that is certainly very troubling. What is a small lift, if you will, in the midst of all of that is the way this community and our allied agencies have come together to address this terrible incident.
Could you elaborate on the firefighting gear that was on board? Exactly what equipment was there and where was it?
I'll let Captain Rochester answer that question.
Okay, you've asked what type of firefighting equipment was on board and its location. Okay. So there's a fixed firefighting system that is located in the engine room. There will be at least handheld, or what we call portable, fire extinguishers at the both exit ways or entryways, if you will. There will be portable fire extinguishers there. There will be a fire extinguisher on the bridge, and there will be a fire extinguisher outside on the main deck.
Those were on this boat, or that's the general?
According to the last examination, inspection that the Coast Guard did, all apparatus was accounted for.
Were the crew members awake or asleep?
My understanding, the crew, I don't have that clear, but we certainly can get that information for you.
We were told they were in their underwear when they got to the Great Escape, which would suggest they were asleep, but yesterday we were being told that they were awake.
We will get that clarification for you.
On boats like this, do the dive tanks have to be kept in separate standard compartments should a fire eventually?
I don't know what the current arrangement was on this boat, but we certainly can provide that clarification for you.
Captain, what can other charters learn from this incident?
I think the question was, what can other charters learn from this incident? I think to make sure everybody understands what the egress, what the emergency escape routes are, which I know that's a requirement for the master and the crew to conduct prior to departure from the dock and during evolutions. So, and what I mean by during evolutions is that there's a change in the operation. But I would suggest that preparation, training, and drilling your fire exercises. Just a moment.
Is there any indication that maybe they were still asleep at the time that they perished?
That as the sheriff said, that is the indication that we have at this time. So the question was, are there any indications that the passengers were asleep at the time of the fire?
No, were they still asleep when they died? Did anyone, can you tell if they woke up and tried to...
That specific, okay, so the question was, were they actually asleep when they perished? And I don't have, that is under investigation. I don't have that specific information.
Does that mean there's no suspicion that the passengers may have somehow started the fire, I don't know, with cigarettes or anything?
So the question is, would the passengers have had any cigarettes or anything of that nature? Is that essentially?
If they were all asleep, there's no possibility any of the passengers could have accidentally started a fire or anything like that?
Okay, so the question is, if the passengers were all asleep, would there have been any possibility that somebody would have been smoking or had left a lit cigarette? And that too is under investigation by the NTSB and the Coast Guard, so I don't have any specific information to that.
Like this, an operation in Southern California, and how big is like sort of the industry?
Okay, so the question is, how many dive vessels are in Southern California, and how big is that operation? I don't have the specific numbers off the top of my head right now, but I most certainly can get that for you. It is a very robust industry, especially during the summertime, and here summertime is technically can be all year round because it's Southern California. So I can't speak. Will this accident affect the industry? And I can't speak to that right now. Thank you.
We're going to go ahead and take two more questions, these two right here. You first, ma'am.
When was the last check of the fire systems, if there were enough issues here?
The question was, when was the last check of the fire system, of the firefighting equipment? You mean it would have been in August when the inspection was conducted?
Whatever the certificate of inspection.
Yeah, I believe it was August that it was inspected. And
Are in the wreckage earlier, in your earlier statement, you said 4 to 6, so that would skew how many people are missing.
there's 14. The question was, we mentioned earlier that there were 4 to 6 people seen last night still in the wreckage, but how many people are missing? There's still, at this stage, are 14 people who are missing, and the bodies that are still within the wreckage that were sighted last night just before darkness, and we were unable to recover those last night. So our hope is that we'll be able to recover them today. And it was 4 to 6 is what the estimate was.
Just to clarify, you said August. Do you mean August of this year or August of last year? For the...
I haven't seen the certificate of inspection. We could get you that.
Can we hear from the NTSB?
Yeah, I don't want to give you information on that because I don't know for sure. I thought it was August of this year, but it might have been of 2018. But it's whenever the last inspection was done, the last required inspection was done, all of that equipment was in operational order. So, ladies and gentlemen, that'll conclude our briefing today. We will reassess where we are in terms of additional information, and we will let you know if there will be another news conference sometime tomorrow. And in the meantime, if we have additional relevant information, we will release it through press release. Thank you.
If any of our Spanish affiliates would like interviews in Spanish, Lieutenant Juan Camarena is on site, so come see me. And if anybody has any clarifying questions on the information that was presented, I'll stick around. We'll do one-on-ones.